Somewhere in southern Turkey, there is a temple older than farming, older than the wheel, older than writing, older than pottery, older than the first city by thousands of years. It is built from stone pillars weighing up to 16 tons each, carved with animals, arranged with unmistakable intention. And it was raised by people who were supposed to be simple hunter-gatherers, wandering with spears. They should not have been able to build it, and when they were finished, they did something even stranger. They buried it, on purpose. Historians have a quiet word for things like this: anomalies. Objects and places from the ancient world that do not fit the tidy story we tell about how humans slowly, steadily climb towards civilization. And the uncomfortable truth is that there are more of them than you have been led to believe. A machine full of bronze gears, 2,000 years ahead of its time. A weapon whose formula an entire empire carried to the grave. A set of objects so strange that, after 2 centuries of study, no historian alive can tell you what they were for. Lines drawn across a desert so vast you can only truly see them from the sky. These are not fringe fantasies. They are real artifacts in real museums, examined by serious people who will admit, if you press them, that they still cannot fully explain what they're holding. Today we go through the ones that still keep them up at night, and we build slowly to the one that may quietly rewrite where civilization itself began. Let's start. Number 1. The Antikythera Mechanism. The year is 1901. A crew of Greek sponge divers, blown off course by a storm, take shelter near a tiny island called Antikythera, between Crete and the mainland. While they wait out the weather, they dive, and 40 meters down, they find a wreck. A Roman-era ship that went down around 60 BC, its cargo scattered across the seabed. Bronze and marble statues, jars, coins, jewelry, the luxury freight of the ancient world. The divers haul up everything they can. Among it is a shapeless lump of corroded bronze, fused with rock and shell. Nobody thinks twice about it. It gets crated with the rest and sent to a museum in Athens, where it sits, ignored for months. Then the lump dries out and it cracks open. Inside, an archaeologist notices something that should not be there. A gear, a precision-cut bronze gear wheel with teeth, and then another and another. Dozens of them interlocking, arranged in a system so fine it looks machined. Inside, an object from the 1st century before Christ. It took most of the 20th century to understand what they were looking at, because what those divers had pulled off the seabed was, for all practical purposes, a computer, an analog computer, made of bronze, more than 2,000 years old. Here is what it did. You turned a handle on the side, and the mechanism, at least 30 interlocking gears, went to work. It tracked the sun and the moon across the sky. It reproduced the phases of the moon. It predicted solar and lunar eclipses years in advance. It even modeled the way the moon speeds up and slows down in its orbit, using a clever pin-and-slot gear that mimicked a motion the Greeks could see but had no physics to explain. It tracked the calendar. It even marked the 4-year cycle of the Games, including the Olympics. All of it cranking away inside a wooden case about the size of a shoebox. Now let me put that in perspective, because the numbers are what break your mind. After this device was built, the human race would not produce anything of comparable mechanical complexity for around 1,400 years. Not until the great astronomical clocks of medieval Europe. 14 centuries. It is roughly the equivalent of opening a Viking burial mound and finding a working wristwatch inside. It should not be there. And yet there it is, behind glass in Athens, right now. Scientists have spent over 100 years on this thing. X-rays in the 1970s. High-resolution CT scans in the 2000s that revealed thousands of tiny Greek inscriptions hidden inside. A kind of instruction manual, and finally let researchers map the gears. In 2021, a team in London published what they believe is a complete model of the front display. And here is the part that matters. Even with all of that, even knowing largely what it did, no one has been able to fully reconstruct how it was made. The precision of the teeth, cut by hand, is not matched by any other surviving object from the ancient world. It has no ancestors, no cruder prototypes, no trail of simpler versions leading up to it. In the archaeological record, it more or less appears out of nowhere, fully formed. No name is carved on it, no maker ever claimed it. And that is the first real mystery. Not just how they did it, but that they did it at all, and then it vanished. Because remember where it was found. On a ship, in transit, being carried somewhere packed in with ordinary cargo, as if owning one were nothing unusual. Which means it was not a lone miracle built by a single genius. Somebody was making these. There was a workshop behind it, a tradition, a line of craftsmen who understood gears and astronomy at a level the world would forget for over 1,000 years. So where did it go? How many more are sitting in the mud at the bottom of the Mediterranean right now? And how does an entire branch of human knowledge, this advanced, this refined, simply disappear, leaving almost nothing behind but one corroded lump that a sponge diver happened to grab on his way up? That is the thing to sit with. We like to picture progress as a staircase, always climbing. The Antikythera Mechanism is proof that it is not. That a people can build something extraordinary and then lose it so completely that when it surfaces again, no one even recognizes what they are holding. Which brings me to the second mystery. And this time, the lost knowledge was not a machine. It was a weapon, one that burned on water. It is the summer of 672, and the Arab fleet has come for Constantinople. Hundreds of ships, an army that has been swallowing the ancient world city by city, now closing on the capital of the Byzantine Empire, the last real heir of Rome. The Byzantines are outnumbered on the water. By every reasonable measure, the city should fall. Then the imperial ships row out to meet the fleet, and they do something no enemy has ever seen. From bronze tubes mounted on the prows of their ships, they spray a stream of liquid fire. It arcs across the water like a flamethrower and lands on the Arab hulls. And it does not go out. It burns on the surface of the sea itself. Sailors who leap overboard to escape find the flames chasing them into the water, clinging to their skin, burning on top of the waves. Whole ships are swallowed in seconds. Within hours, the fleet that came to take Constantinople is smoke and floating ash. That was Greek fire. And for the next 7 centuries, it was the most feared weapon on earth. It appeared, the sources say, around the year 672, carried into Constantinople by a refugee engineer named Kallinikos, who had fled the Arab conquest of Syria. One man walks into the city with a secret in his head, and the balance of the whole medieval world tips. The Byzantines used it to break siege after siege. When the Arabs came back a generation later, in 717, with an even larger force, Greek fire helped destroy that fleet too. Enemy captains learned to dread the sight of the Byzantine siphon ships. Sometimes the rumor alone that Greek fire was waiting was enough to turn a fleet around. It may have kept the Eastern Roman Empire alive for centuries longer than it had any right to survive. And here is the mystery. We have no idea how to make it. Not a vague idea, no idea. The formula for Greek fire is completely lost because the Byzantines understood exactly what they were holding, that this one secret was the difference between empire and extinction. And they guarded it like nothing else. The recipe was a state secret of the highest order. The knowledge was deliberately split up, handed down within a tiny circle, and never fully written down in one place. They protected it so well that eventually they lost it themselves. The weapon that saved the empire died with the empire, and possibly before it. Even the enemies who faced it, and the chroniclers who wrote it down, never learned what it was. They only recorded what it did. We can guess at the ingredients. Most historians think it involved crude oil, naphtha skimmed from surface seeps, thickened with pine resin, mixed with sulfur, perhaps quicklime, which reacts violently with water and might explain how it burned on the sea. But the ingredients are only half the puzzle. The other half is the machine that sprayed it, a heated, pressurized bronze siphon and pump that could throw burning liquid without exploding in the crew's own faces. Reproduce the chemistry, and you still have to reproduce that. And no one has a manual for either. Modern researchers have built things that come close. Incendiaries that burn on water, that behave a little like the accounts describe. but close is not solved. Nobody can stand over their version and say, with certainty, this is Greek fire. The real thing is gone. And listen, if you've made it this far with me, into the strange gap between what the ancient world knew and what we can prove, then you already understand what this channel is. We do this every single day. We take the version of history you were handed and we go looking for the parts that don't add up. If that's the kind of thing you want showing up in your feed, subscribe. It's free and it keeps you in the loop. And do me a favor. In the comments, tell me this. Do you think the Byzantines lost that formula by accident? Or do you think some secrets are guarded so well and so deliberately that they are meant to die? I read them and that one always splits the room. Now, the first two mysteries were about knowledge we lost. The next one is different, and in a way it is worse. Because this is not something that vanished, it is something we still have. Hundreds of them in museums across Europe. You can hold one in your hand, and after 200 years, not a single historian on Earth can tell you for certain what it was for. They are called the Roman dodecahedra, and they may be the most quietly baffling objects ever pulled out of the ground. Number 3, the Roman dodecahedra. Picture a small object that fits in your palm. It is cast in bronze, hollow, and shaped like a 12-sided die. A dodecahedron, 12 flat pentagonal faces. In the center of each face is a round hole. And here is the odd part. The holes are all different sizes. And at every corner, every point where the faces meet, there is a little rounded knob, like a stud, 20 of them. The whole thing is deliberate, careful, well made. Somebody cast this on purpose, with skill, for a reason. We just have absolutely no idea what the reason was. The first one turned up in England in 1739. Since then, more than 100 have been found, over 120 at last count, scattered across the northwestern edge of the old Roman Empire. Britain, France, Germany, the lands that used to be Gaul. And here is the first strange pattern. They are almost never found in the heart of the empire. Not in Italy, not in Greece, not in the Mediterranean core where Rome documented everything. They cluster out in the Celtic and Gallo-Roman provinces, dating mostly to the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th centuries after Christ. They come in sizes from about a golf ball to something that fills your palm, and a few are not 12-sided, but 20, icosahedra, as if the makers were experimenting. Many were found carefully buried, some tucked into coin hoards, hidden away like treasure. Whatever they were, people cared about them enough to protect them. Now the Romans were writers, obsessive writers. We have their recipes, their laws, their engineering manuals, graffiti scratched on the walls of Pompeii. They wrote down how to build an aqueduct, how to lay out a military camp, how to season a sauce. And yet, in all of that vast surviving record, there is not one single mention of these objects. Not one. No text describes them. No carving depicts them. No inscription on the objects themselves gives us their name. A whole category of carefully made bronze artifacts simply exists in our hands, in our museums, with zero explanation attached. So the theories have piled up for 250 years, and there are a lot of them. Maybe they were measuring devices. You sight through the holes of different sizes to gauge distance, a kind of rangefinder for surveyors or soldiers. Clean idea, except the holes follow no consistent standard from one dodecahedron to the next, which is exactly what you would need for a measuring tool to actually work. Maybe they were astronomical or agricultural calendars. You line up the sun through a certain pair of holes to find the right day to plant. Maybe they were religious objects, tied to the Celtic and Druidic traditions of the very regions where they appear. Maybe the heads of scepters or standards. Maybe gaming pieces. One was found with wax inside, so maybe candle holders. And in recent years, one popular demonstration showed you can use the knobs and holes to knit the fingers of a glove. The object works beautifully as a knitting tool. It is oddly satisfying to watch. But there is no ancient evidence anyone used them that way either. And it does not explain why they turn up buried in graves with coins, treated like something precious. That is the pattern with every theory. Each one explains part of it and then falls apart on the rest. 2.5 centuries, over 100 examples, countless scholars, and no consensus. None. And that is what makes the dodecahedra quietly unnerving. It is not a lost city or a sunken ship. It is a small, ordinary-looking object made by the most thoroughly documented civilization in the ancient world, in numbers, valued enough to bury with the dead, and its meaning fell out of human memory so completely that we cannot recover it. Someone 2,000 years ago could have told you in a single sentence what it was. That sentence is gone, and no amount of scanning, cataloging, or theorizing has been able to bring it back. It is a reminder that well-documented is not the same as understood, that a thing can be common and useful and completely obvious to the people who made it and still become a total mystery to us, simply because no one ever thought the obvious was worth writing down. The first three mysteries were small enough to hold in your hand or to lose. The next one is the opposite. It is so large that for most of human history, nobody even knew the whole of it was there, because you can only truly see it from the sky. In southern Peru, there is a high, flat desert, one of the driest places on the entire planet. Some parts of it may go years without a drop of rain. And across roughly 400 square kilometers of that desert floor, someone drew. Not small drawings, enormous ones. Over 800 long straight lines, some running arrow straight for miles across uneven ground without ever bending. Around 300 geometric shapes, and dozens of giant figures. A hummingbird, a monkey with a curled spiral tail, a spider, a condor, a heron the length of a football field. A whole gallery of images cut into the earth, on a scale so vast that from the ground you can barely tell they are there. They were made by the Nazca people and by the cultures before them, somewhere between 2,000 and 1,500 years ago. Let us start with how, because that part we actually mostly understand. The desert floor is covered in dark, reddish-brown stones, stained by iron oxide. Underneath is lighter, yellowish ground. To make a line, you simply remove the dark stones and expose the pale earth below. That is it, a line drawn by taking away rather than adding. And because this desert is so still, so dry, so windless, those lines have survived, almost untouched, for 2,000 years. You do not need advanced technology either. Stakes, cords, and careful surveying can hold a straight line for miles, and simple scaling can blow a sketch up to the size of a field. So the how is not really the mystery is why. And more precisely, for whom. Because here is the thing that has haunted people since these were first noticed from the air in the early 20th century. The full figures, the animals, the great designs, read best from above, far above. From the ground you are standing in the middle of a shape too big to perceive. It is only when you rise into the sky, in a plane, or now a drone, that the hummingbird becomes a hummingbird. And the Nazca had no aircraft, no balloons, no mountain high enough to take it all in. They created images whose complete form they themselves could never have seen. So who were they drawing for? For decades, the site's great champion was a mathematician named Maria Ricca, who spent almost her whole life out on that plateau mapping the lines. She was convinced they formed a vast astronomical calendar. Later work mostly took that apart. Only a handful line up with anything in the sky. This is where the fringe theories rushed in decades ago. Alien runways, landing strips for visitors from the stars. Set that aside. The evidence never needed it. The serious answer is quieter and honestly, more moving. The Nazca lived and died by water in a place that had almost none. And many of the lines and figures appear to connect to water, to underground sources, to fertility, to the sacred need for rain. Archaeologists have found that people walk these lines on foot in what look like processions. Pottery, offerings, and footpaths worn into the designs, which reframes the whole puzzle. Maybe the Nazca were not trying to be seen by other people at all. Maybe the drawings were never meant for human eyes. Maybe they were made to be seen from above, not by aliens, but by gods. Prayers drawn at enormous scale into the desert, addressed upward to whatever they believed was watching from the sky and holding back the rain. An act of devotion so large you performed it with your whole body, by walking it, trusting that the only audience that mattered was looking down. We cannot prove that is the answer, and the site keeps getting stranger, not simpler. In just the last few years, Researchers using drones and artificial intelligence have found hundreds of new figures no one had ever spotted, nearly doubling the known count. 2,000 years on, the desert is still revealing drawings we did not know were there. So we understand the how. We have a strong, humane guess at the why, but the core of it stays unresolved. A people carefully composing images for a vantage point they could never occupy, aiming their art at the sky and simply trusting that someone up there could read it. The Nazca aimed their mystery at the sky. The last one on our list aims at somewhere even harder to reach. It aims it at time. Because to understand it, you have to throw out almost everything you were taught about when civilization began, and it has been waiting this whole time under a hill in Turkey. Number 5. And this one is different. This is the mystery that quietly breaks the timeline. It is the mid-1990s, and a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt is standing on a low hill in southeastern Turkey near the city of Sanliurfa. The locals call it Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill. Decades earlier in the 1960s, a survey team had glanced at this place, seen some broken limestone slabs poking out of the ground, and written it off as the remains of a medieval cemetery, not worth digging. Schmidt looks at the same slabs and thinks, those are not gravestones. Those are the tops of something enormous, still buried. So he starts to dig. And what comes out of that hill rewrites the opening chapter of human history. Under the soil are massive pillars of limestone, shaped like giant capital T's. The biggest stand around 5.5 meters tall and weigh as much as 10 to 16 tons apiece. They are arranged in great rings, circles of standing stones with more pillars set into the walls between them. And they are carved beautifully and deliberately with animals in relief. Foxes, boars, snakes, scorpions, vultures, cranes, wild bulls. Some of the T-pillars have arms carved down their sides and hands that meet at the front, and belts, as if the stone itself is a towering, faceless human figure. This is not a pile of rocks. It is architecture. It is art. It is a designed sacred space, and not a gentle one. The carved creatures are mostly dangerous ones, snakes and scorpions and snarling foxes and vultures, as if the place was built to stir fear more than peace. And then they ran the dates. Göbekli Tepe is about 11,600 years old. Some of it may be older. Let that number settle, because comparison is the only way to feel it. It is roughly 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It is around 7,000 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was already ancient, thousands of years ancient, before the first cities, before writing, before the wheel, before metal tools, before pottery, and before farming. That is the part that stops historians cold. Because for a century, the story of civilization went in one fixed order. First, humans learned to farm. Farming produced surplus food. Surplus food let people settle in one place, build towns, specialize, grow rich, and only then, once they had cities and priests and spare labor, build temples and monuments. Agriculture first, everything else after. That was the rule. Göbekli Tepe was built by people who had not yet learned to farm. We know this from what they left behind. The mountains of animal bones dug out of the site are from wild creatures. Gazelle, wild boar, aurochs. Hunted, not herded. There are no domesticated crops in the earliest layers, no silos of a settled town, no sign that anyone permanently lived on that hill. The people who raised these 10-ton pillars were hunter-gatherers, nomads more or less with stone tools. No wheels to move the megaliths, no draft animals to pull them, no metal to carve them, no writing to plan them. And yet they quarried monoliths the weight of a truck, carved them with skill, and stood them upright in coordinated rings, which is not a job for a wandering band of a dozen people. To move and raise stones like that, you need hundreds of workers, organized, fed, and directed toward a shared purpose over years. From a society we had labeled too simple and too scattered to do any such thing, they did it anyway, 11,600 years ago, before the tools we assume were required to even attempt it. And here is the thing. We have barely seen it. Ground scanning surveys suggest the hill holds around 20 of these great enclosures. Only a handful have been fully excavated. Schmidt estimated that after decades of work, perhaps 5% of the site had been uncovered. The other 95% is still down there, in the dark, waiting. So Göbekli Tepe leaves us standing in front of two questions that should not even be askable about a Stone Age hunting people. The first is simply, why? Why would people who did not farm, did not settle, and did not build so much as a permanent house pour that much labor into a giant ring of carved stone in the middle of nowhere? And the second question is stranger than the first, because when they were finished with it, they did not just walk away and abandon it, they buried it, on purpose, by hand. Let me tell you what that might mean. Start with why they built it, because the leading answer flips the whole story of civilization on its head. Klaus Schmidt, the man who dug it up, spent 20 years with this site, and he came to believe that Göbekli Tepe was not a town, not a fort, not a place anyone lived. It was a temple, a gathering place, somewhere scattered bands of hunter-gatherers traveled to build together, to carve those stone beings, to perform whatever rites happened inside those rings, and then go home. The first monumental sacred site in the human record. And Schmidt said something about it that has echoed through archaeology ever since. He said, "First came the temple, then the city. Sit with how radical that is." The old story said food came first. Farm, settle, grow rich, then build. Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite. What first pulled large numbers of humans together and made them cooperate on a massive scale was not the plow. It was belief, shared meaning, the pull of something sacred on a hill. And here's the detail that makes it more than a nice idea. To build this and to keep hundreds of workers fed on that hill for weeks at a time, you would need a great deal of food in one place. And the wild ancestor of domesticated wheat grows right there. Geneticists have traced some of the earliest domesticated wheat on Earth to a range of hills you can almost see from Göbekli Tepe. So the picture that emerges is staggering. The need to feed the people building the temple may have been part of what pushed them to start farming at all. Not farming, then temples. Temples, and then farming to sustain the temples. The cathedral before the city, meaning before bread. Now I will be straight with you, because this channel does not sell tidy answers. That clean slogan, first the temple, then the city, is debated. Newer work at the site has found more signs of everyday life, of water channels, maybe of people staying longer than Schmidt thought. The simple version may be too simple, but notice what the debate does not touch. Even in the most cautious reading, you still have pre-agricultural people, with stone tools, raising carved 10-ton monoliths in organized numbers, at the exact moment and in the exact place that farming itself was being born. The link between the monument and the dawn of agriculture is real. We are only arguing about which way the arrow points. Then there is the second question, the burial. Because around 10,000 years ago, the people of Göbekli Tepe did something almost no one else in history has done to their own greatest work. They filled it in, deliberately. They packed the enclosures with rubble, gravel, flint chips, and the bones of their feasts, by hand, basket by basket, until the giant pillars were buried and the whole thing vanished back into the hill. They did not tear it down. They did not let it rot. They entombed it carefully, as if laying it to rest. Nobody knows why. Maybe it was a ritual death for a sacred place, a way of retiring it, closing it when its time was over. Maybe each generation buried what came before and raised something new on top. Maybe it was protection. We genuinely do not know. But here is the strange gift buried inside that act. It is the only reason we have any of this. By hiding their temple, they preserved it, almost perfectly, for 11,000 years. Long enough for a man with a trowel to climb a hill in Turkey and find the beginning of us, waiting under the dirt. And it is not alone. In the years since, archaeologists have begun finding sister sites across that same region of Turkey. Other hills, other rings, other carved pillars. A whole lost landscape of monument-building hunter-gatherers that no one knew existed a generation ago. We are right now in the middle of discovering that the story of our own origins is older and stranger than the textbooks ever admitted. That is why Göbekli Tepe sits at the end of this list. The others are objects and places we cannot fully explain. This one reopens the oldest question we have. Who were we at the very start? What did we build first, and why? And the honest answer, the one that survives contact with the evidence, is that we are far less certain than we used to pretend. 5 mysteries: a computer, a fire, an object, a field of lines in the sand, and a buried temple older than history itself. Let me pull them together, because underneath all 5, there is one uncomfortable thing they are quietly telling us. Look back at the 5 and notice how different they are. A bronze computer off a shipwreck, a weapon that burned on water, a little metal object that fits in your palm, a field of drawings only the sky can read, a temple older than farming, buried by the people who built it. Different centuries, different corners of the world, different kinds of thing entirely. And yet they all end in the same place, the exact spot where our confident story of the past runs out of road. Because here is the thread running under all of them. We like to tell history as a clean staircase. Primitive people at the bottom, us at the top, and a steady climb in between. Each generation a little more capable than the one before. It is comforting. It is the one you were taught. And these 5 are the cracks in it. The Antikythera Mechanism says, knowledge does not only accumulate, it can be built to a stunning height and then vanish, so completely that we do not even recognize it when it washes back up. Greek fire says a civilization can hold a world-changing secret and carry it to the grave. The dodecahedra say a thing can be common, useful, and obvious to everyone alive, and still lose all its meaning in the space of a few centuries, simply because nobody wrote the obvious down. The Nazca Lines say people poured their lives into work, aimed at a viewpoint they would never occupy. And Göbekli Tepe says the very first chapter of our story, the one we were most sure of, may be in the wrong order. None of this requires aliens. None of it requires magic. That is the part I want to leave you with. The truth is stranger and quieter than any of that. The truth is that the people who came before us were far more capable than we give them credit for, and that history is far more fragile than we are comfortable admitting. Things get lost, meanings get buried. The record has holes, and the holes are bigger than the tidy version lets on. So the next time you are in a museum and you read one of those little white labels, look closely at the wording, because a surprising number of them, if you translate the careful academic language, quietly say the same thing. We do not actually know. Purpose uncertain. Method not fully understood. Function debated. Behind a lot of that calm confidence is a shrug. And the confidence is there partly for our comfort. It is easier to walk past an object that has been explained than one that has not. Here's the thing that stays with me, though. Every one of these mysteries had an answer once. Somebody built the Antikythera Mechanism and knew exactly how. Somebody mixed Greek fire and could have written the recipe down. Somebody held a dodecahedron and could have told you its name without thinking. The answers existed. They were ordinary ones. We did not lose them because those people were primitive. We lost them because time is not gentle, and because we assumed too early that we already knew. And the ground is not finished with us. Göbekli Tepe is barely 5% uncovered. The Nazca Desert keeps handing over figures we never saw. The Mediterranean floor is scattered with untouched wrecks. The past is not a closed book. It is still arriving. A little more of it, every year, forcing us to admit we had it slightly wrong. That is the real reason a story like this matters. Not to sell you a conspiracy, to keep you honest about how much we still do not know, and how much is still down there, waiting for someone to climb the right hill or dive the right wreck and find the start of another story we thought was finished. Before I let you go, I am curious which one got to you. For some, it is the machine, the thought that we were once that advanced and forgot. For me, it is the little dodecahedron, the ordinary thing everyone knew and no one bothered to write down, the kind of forgetting that could happen to any of us. If you made it this far, you already know this isn't the kind of channel that's going anywhere. We put out something like this every single day, the version of the story that survives contact with the actual evidence. Subscribing keeps you in that loop. And if this one stayed with you, send it to 5 people who'd sit through something this long with you. Not everyone will. Some people do. Leave a comment, a real one. Tell me what part of this actually surprised you. And tell me what civilization, what forgotten site, what quiet piece of hidden history you want us to look at next. We'll be here tomorrow, still digging.